Hi, and welcome to the Money Cure podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Robert Grant. Some good coffee. Thank you guys for joining me on this awesome podcast today. So happy to have you here. So just full of joy that you decide to join me in this journey that I'm taking, that I call my life. And it's amazing how everyone is connected, everyone is intertwined, everyone is running the same race in different lanes, but we can share so much of ourselves with each other and come to the understanding that it all gets back to one thing: love and truth. And as you embrace love and truth in everything you do, you will find pure joy and true wealth. Which leads us to our topic today. Pure joy leads to true wealth. So when we think of pure joy, immediately, it's important for us to flash back to our childhoods. And when I say flashback to the childhoods, I'm referring to a time where things were really simple. Things were really they were just easy. And what's interesting is this is how life is supposed to continue, but because we are wrapped in other people's stories and other people's journeys, a lot of times maybe their lack of consciousness causes us to fall out of alignment at some point. And this can be your parents, your guardians, your siblings, whoever it may be. But somewhere along the line, we get pushed out of alignment. And when you're pushed out of alignment, all alignment is understanding that God is in you and God is in action and God is doing everything in you, right? And so in doing that, you experience so much joy because you're moving with the moment. You're moving with the now. And this becomes, or not becomes, it is so very exciting because you're engaged and you're exuding presence. And presence is one of the most magical, exciting things any of us could ever encounter or have. Okay, so we think of pure joy, we get back to the thing we really loved. For some of us, that was sports. For others, it was video games. For others, it was performing on stage, doing piano or clarinet or flute. Something that really engaged you so much that you were completely oblivious to what was outside of you. You got in what they call the zone, right? That is what leads to your true wealth. That is what leads to your joy and your understanding of what it truly means to be as wealthy as you possibly can be. So for us, if you're like most people, like I said, along the way, you've kind of lost that zest. You've kind of lost that joy. Nothing really gives it to you because all of a sudden responsibility came in, and being a quote unquote good person by getting a job, having a paycheck every 2 weeks, doing what you're told, keeping your head down, not speaking your truth, sort of became the norm. It sort of became the success, if you would, of life. And that it happened to me. Like I just remember being in a retail store and making I think it was $1,500 every 2 weeks. And just thinking to myself, every time I was in that store, I was always thinking about what else is out there in the world for me. What else could I be doing where I could be present? My football career had just ended. And that was the one of the couple things in my life from a kid up into my early 20s where I could really be present. I could just lose myself in it, right? But I didn't have that anymore. So I had to figure out what would make me present. What would make me present? And then all of a sudden, by asking that question, I got an inkling of hope from a coworker. And this is the most bizarre but amazing story ever. She came up to me and she said, you know what? You look like you work out. I'm doing a fashion show for this clothing company, and I want you to be in it. I'm like, huh? She said, okay, just show up at this time. It pays $150. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, got it. So I do this show. Well, I show up, and it's in front of a crowd, and it kind of somewhat reminds me of my days when I played ball and playing in front of the people in the stands. And, you know, the show starts. I get on stage, like people are giving me a round of applause and stuff like that. And I realize I am present in the moment. I am present and I am experiencing joy from performing. I'm experiencing more joy than I have had in a few years. And it is absolutely exhilarating. And it was so much joy to the point where I got so wrapped up in doing this entire event, I forgot I was getting paid for it at the end of it. I forgot I was getting paid for it. And all of a sudden, the guy who runs the venue comes up and hands me a check. And I'm like, oh, what's this? It was an envelope. I didn't know it was a check. And I opened it, and it turned out to be a check. It was the $150 that they said they were going to give me. And I absolutely fell in love. From that point on, for the next 2-3 years, I think I did a total of like 60 different shows. So that's an example to show you. And this is called the money cure because we together want to dive in to the things that's not allowing money to work, the things that's not allowing money to flow. And what I've understood is that energy is one of the number one things that does not allow money to flow. Blocked energy, blocked emotions, faulty thinking, faulty belief systems, but also not following our joy and offering what brings us the spice of life. That's what it comes down to. If you're not in a place where you can be doing something where you just get completely lost, where you get into that zone, something has to give. Something has to give. You maybe even have to retrace back to your childhood. What types of things gave me that feeling? Because the shocking thing is, you'd be surprised when you start to revisit and start asking these questions, how your mind and your heart comes up with these ideas of what really brings out the passion in you. And so I tell you that because that thing when I told you I was so caught up in what I was doing that I forgot I was getting paid, that thing, things like that is what is going to create the wealth of your dreams. Because what that does, that immediately taps in to the creative God in you, the creative aspect that is fulfilling of itself and doesn't need anything else outside of it, right? So I'll tell you right now, if that does not exist, we've got to rethink where we are. We've got to figure out, okay, how do we get this feeling? And a lot of times people will attempt to discourage you, saying that if it doesn't make enough money, you can't do it. But see, here's what you have to understand. The amount of money you can make runs out eventually, but that type of passion, that type of joy, that type of engagement is absolutely eternal. So if you feel that in something, immediately that means that this thing that you're feeling can be something that you get extremely wealthy off. And that's not even like the objective, but it's something, anytime you're engaged in something that exudes your divine essence so much that you lose yourself in it, that's going to create money for you, because you being able to do that thing in that capacity is improving the lives of others. You know, people ask me all the time, well, how is it athletes get paid so much? Because these athletes are the ultimate example of what happens when you lose yourself in something you love. You're completely focused. You're not thinking about anything else. You're in the moment and you're embracing it, and you're doing something that's providing entertainment and value to other people. See, when you go to a sporting event, don't just look at it as a bunch of ripped up guys running around, hitting the ball, throwing the ball, catching the ball, throwing the ball in the hoop. Look at it as individuals expressing their divine essence to the highest degree, and that is possible for you. That is what you should think about every time you go to a sporting event, because that is the reason why athletes make so much money, because they teach us, so to speak, how to fully embrace that pure joy. And you can see some of the contracts today. That's why the wealth continues to grow. That's why the wealth continues to grow. Bryce Harper, $335 million, 13-year contract. Mike Trout, $430 million. Manny Machado, $260 million. Like, I'm talking about baseball guys, but still, I've seen a guy, DeMarcus Lawrence from the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL, signed for $105 million. The wealth is growing, and it's not because it's a certain area. It's because they have tapped in to that joy that creates wealth, that creates the eternal bliss of the God within you by getting lost in the thing that you're creating. And that's all it takes, guys. That's all it takes to find that thing, whatever that thing is for you. And the easiest way to do that is say, what am I passionate about? What am I passionate about? And if you're like me, you can use other stuff to kind of like open the gates for this wealth to come through. So, for instance, I go to the batting cage like once a week, probably going to start going more. But at the batting cage, I have to be all in. I have to be completely engaged in this 90-mile-an-hour fastball coming at me in order for me to take that stick and hit that ball coming at me. And it is the most exhilarating feeling when you connect the bat with the ball and you hit it and it goes screaming off the bat. I can't even explain it. You got to try it for yourself. But that creates so much joy in me. It creates so much excitement in me. And I just absolutely love it. I love it to the highest degree. And what it does is it continues to lead me to identify those passions that create this type of joy that we've been discussing. Man, when you do that, look out. Look out, because you can write your own ticket and you will never have to worry about money ever again, because it's that joy that's going to create all the income, all the resources that you would ever need. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. It has been a pleasure. Appreciate you. Talk soon. Take care.